We begin today the Gemara towards the bottom of Daf Memvav Amud Beis, the last three lines on the Amud where it says Omar Rava. So the Gemara here is discussing the Pshat and the Mishnah in the beginning of this Pedic. The Mishnah says when you have a cow that gored an ox, and it's unclear whether when it gored, the vlad, the fetus, was inside the body of this cow, so therefore you can collect the payment for the damages from both the cow and the fetus, or no, maybe the one that gored is really just a cow. The fetus, the baby was born already before, and therefore you could only collect the damages from the cow, not from the fetus. So the lashon that it said in the Mishnah was that this is a short tam that's damaging. You can collect the chatzi nezek, which would mean the full payment that you owe here, from the cow, and then you pay a quarter from the vlad, from the fetus. That was lashon of the Mishnah. So the Gemara asked them that would mean that the nizik is getting paid more than he's supposed to. He's getting paid a half and then another quarter. What's the Mishnah saying? So the Gemara brought before a pshat from Abaye, without getting into all the details. Abaye basically said that what it said in the Mishnah, you have to read it differently. It doesn't mean literally. You don't get half and then another quarter. When it said in the Mishnah half, it means half of half. From the cow itself, you could only take, because it's a suffix, if it was mazik alone or together with the vlad, so you could only take a quarter. And then from the vlad, since it's not clear if it was inside the body of the cow, when the cow gored or not, you could only take half of a quarter, which would be an eighth. That's what the Mishnah really meant. The Gemara explained the details of how and when exactly that applies, but that was the basic point of Abaye's pshat. Now on this, Rava asks, and Rava gives a different pshat. Omar Rava, so Rava says on this, Otu echad marba benezek, ve'echad b'shmeine benezek ketani. Does it say in the Mishnah, this lashon that you suggested, that from the cow you only collect a quarter, and from the vlad you only collect an eighth? It's not what it says. Chatzi nezek v'revia nezek ketani. In the Mishnah it says that from the cow itself, you could collect the full damages of Chatzi Nezek that's owed, and from the Vlad you can collect the Revia Nezek. So if you want to learn the words of the Mishnah as it appears without making other Pirushim, how are we going to understand the Mishnah? So therefore Allah Rava suggests a different shot. La'olam bepara uvlad dechad. We're talking over here about the cow and the fetus that belongs to the same individual. One of the other points here I forgot to mention was that Abaye's pshat was based on the fact that the para and the fetus are not owned by the same individual. So therefore, when you're collecting, you can collect from one or you can collect from the other, but you're not collecting the full amounts of here. It belongs to two different people. But Rava says, no. The pshat in our Mishnah is that the para and the fetus belongs to the same person. And this is how you have to learn the pshat in our Mishnah. Isa lepara. If the cow itself that gored is here, and therefore you want to collect the damages from the cow itself, so then mishtalem chatzi nezek mipara. You could actually collect the full collection of chatzi nezek from the cow itself. What's the reason for this? So the reason is, and we'll see that Rashi later explains this, because the cow itself, we know for sure that this cow is the one that gored, and it doesn't make a difference, according to Rava, whether the fetus was inside the cow or whether the fetus was not inside the cow, regarding the fact that you can collect the full payment from the cow itself. Why is that? Because according to Rava, the fetus that's inside a cow is considered to be like a limb of the cow itself. So even if it's true that if the fetus was inside the cow, so it gives the cow more power, and therefore when it gored, the fetus participated in this goring, but it doesn't matter. The fetus is just like a limb of the cow itself. So therefore, whether the fetus was inside the cow, whether the fetus was not, if the cow itself is here, it's this cow with whatever limb it had or didn't have, gored. So you can collect the full payment of Chatzi Nezek from this cow itself. However, less lepare, if the cow itself is not here, then because when it comes to the fetus, there's a suffix. We don't know if that fetus was inside the cow when it gored or not. So mishtalim revia nezek mevlad. So from this fetus, if the cow itself is gone, so you can't collect the chatzi nezek from the cow, and we're talking over here about tam, that you could only collect from the body itself that damaged. So if the para itself is gone, and now you want to collect from the fetus, since regarding the fetus it's unclear if it was inside and therefore was part of the goring or not, so then you collect only revia nezek mevlad. You can only collect a quarter from the vlad. That's what our Mishnah meant to say. So it's not that you're collecting both. It's either or. If the cow is here, you collect the full chatzi nezek from the cow, and if the vlad is the only thing that's here, so then you can collect only a quarter from the vlad. Now the Gemara continues to explain according to Rava. The reason why we say that you could only collect a quarter of the damages from this fetus is because the because it's unclear whether this fetus was inside the cow when it gored or not. But however, you could understand according to Rave that if it's obvious, we know for a fact that this fetus was inside the cow when it gored. So then kinokha, if it gores, and you don't have the cow itself is not here to collect, you could only collect from the fetus, mishtalim, then you could collect the entire payment from the vlad. Because what's this vlad? As I explained before, she says here, the pshat is that the vlad is a limb of this cow. That's what a vlad, when it's inside the body, it's like a limb of the cow. So therefore, if it in fact was inside when it gored, and that's the only thing you have to collect from, it's like a limb from the cow, and you can collect the full payment of the damages from this vlad. And what explains further that the chiddush of Rav over here regarding this fetus that's inside the cow, the basis of this is as follows. When you have a fetus that's inside a cow, one way to view it is that this fetus is really a separate entity. It's already it's a child, it's a baby in itself. It's just being contained inside the body of the mother before it's born, right before it's born. We're talking over here about this Vlad, right before it's born. So then for sure you would think it's a separate entity. But no, the Gemara says, Rava l'taimei, Rava follows his opinion, Rava said, Para sheizika, a para that damaged, goivim of Vlada. So if you don't have the cow here to collect from, you can collect the full payment of damages from the Vlad. My time gufihi. The reason is because the Vlad, while it's still in the mother, it's part of the body of the mother. But however, he says, there's another case, tarnagoyles shezika, when you have a chicken that damaged, so then ain't a goyim mi beitzasa. If the chicken is not here, you can't say, there were eggs inside the chicken when it caused damage, so maybe I should collect from the eggs, which are part of the body of the mother. But over there, it doesn't work that way. My time, why? Because pirshe ba'al mahu. The eggs are merely a secretion. The eggs are, it's a separate entity from the body of the mother itself, and therefore from the eggs you can't collect anything. That's what Rava says, and that explains also what Rava meant to say over here. Okay, now the Gemara comes back, another statement from Rava regarding actually the first case of our Mishnah. What was the first case of our Mishnah? When the shayr, it's an ox that gored, and it damaged a cow and the fetus. In the Mishnah, the case was that it was a suffix if the fetus was gored and killed by this shayr. But over here, Rava talks about a case where it's not a suffix. You know for a fact that this shayr gored and killed the mother, or it killed the mother and the fetus as well. So Rava says about this case, how do you evaluate the payment of the damages? Ein shamin lepara b'fnei atzma. You will not evaluate the cow separately, if it died, if it was killed, to evaluate the loss of the cow separately, and then to evaluate the fetus separately, that it was killed, and what was the loss of the vlad separately. Or rather, shomin levlad al gav para. You evaluate the fetus when it's inside the cow. What you evaluate is the loss of this fetus inside the cow, meaning if you have a cow that is pregnant and you have a cow that's not pregnant, what's the difference in value? What loss is there over here with the fact that this Vlad died? Mm-hmm. Okay, now the value of that level of damage is going to be much less. If you're evaluating how much you can sell a cow and now this cow is dead, what's the loss over here? And you evaluate the Vlad separately. How much could you sell this baby that was just born? And now it's dead. So each one could be sold separately. You can get much more money if you're selling a Vlad separately. So if you're evaluating each one separately, it's going to be a much bigger damage. The mazik will have to pay much more. But if you evaluate the cow with the fetus inside, it's not separate yet. You're not selling the fetus separately, and you're evaluating the Vlad inside the pada. How much is the pada worth with the Vlad inside, and how much is the pada worth without the Vlad inside? Over there, the value of the damage is going to come out to be much less. So Rav explains, if you're not going to evaluate it this way, the Vlad inside the pada, so then you're going to end up causing a weakness, a loss to the mazik. You're going to have to pay much more. So therefore we don't evaluate the Vlad separately. The Gemara is soon going to explain why are we so concerned about that the mazik shouldn't lose out of here. The Gemara first brings another two examples where we find a similar thing. We find also if you cut off the hand of a servant of someone, so now you have to pay the master for the damages that his servant doesn't have his hand anymore. This is a major damage. So how do you evaluate this damage? You don't evaluate how much would you be ready to pay, how much would it cost to pay if someone would be asked, do you want to knock off this hand, take off this hand? That the value of that kind of a damage, if you're just going to evaluate how much it would cost to take off a hand, is going to be a tremendous amount of money. Rather, the way you evaluate it is, if you were to buy an eved, you evaluate it more with the whole picture. If you were to buy an eved, and you were to buy an eved that is missing a hand, and you were to buy an eved that's not missing a hand, what would be the difference in the value between the two? That's the way you evaluate the damage. So again, similar over here, you don't evaluate just the hand itself, but you evaluate it in relevance to the whole body of the person. Similar also, when you damage your friend, a portion of your friend's property, one little area in your friend's property. So over there is the same halacha. We're going to learn about this barichas later in the Masechta. You could evaluate just that little area itself. How much is this area itself worth? If I would want to sell this little area as a field for itself, then the damage is going to be very high. But if this little area is part of a big property, and now you're going to look at the value of the whole property, and let's evaluate the difference between this whole property with this little piece in it, that's there, not damaged, and if you have this damage, this little area in the framework of the whole entire field. That's the way you evaluate the damage. It comes out to be much less than if you just evaluate this one little piece of property separately. If you would want to sell it separately, then you can get much more money for that. So that value is going to be much higher. So here again, you see that you evaluate it in contrast to or in relevance to the whole entire piece of property here. And same thing over here, beneged to the vlad. So you evaluate the vlad inside the potter, not separately. But Ravacha asks Ravashi regarding the reasoning that Rava said, we don't want the mazik to lose out. But if this is the halacha that you do have to evaluate the vlad separately, so likchish mazik, let the mazik be weak, let him lose out. Why is Rava saying this reason? So the Gemara answer is not really, he's not supposed to lose out of here. Mishum da amalei, because the mazik could say, look, para ma barta aziktoch. If in fact my ox gored your cow and killed the vlad, how did it happen? Because it was before it was born. And therefore, when it was still in the mother's womb, that's when it gored and killed both together. So therefore, para ma barta shamin alach. So therefore, when we have to evaluate the damage that I did, we don't evaluate the para and the vlad separately, because the way the damage itself happened was when the vlad was inside the para. Okay, so therefore, this is alpitin. This is not stam having a rachmanis on the mazik. This is the way it's supposed to be, and that's really what Rava meant to say. Okay, now the Gemara talks about this case over here of the para and the vlad, where the shar gored and killed both the para and the vlad. But here we're talking about a case where the para belongs to one person, and the vlad, the ownership of the fetus, is from someone else. So now, pshite, the halacha is obvious. Para dechad, the cow belongs to one person, and vlad dechad, and the fetus belongs to someone else. Now you have to figure out regarding the loss of the para. So obviously there are certain things that are obvious here, that the para belongs to one, the vlad belongs to the other. But the Gemara now adds here as follows.
The vlad is from that same para?
Yeah, the vlad from the same para, but the original owner of this para, sold this para to two people. He sold the para to one person, and he sold the fetus inside the para to someone else. So now they're not owned by the same person. So now when this damage happens, pitma labal para. The fatness of this cow that now got damaged and this cow is now dead, who gets paid for that? The Baal Para gets paid for that. Now the chiddush over here is, even though the fatness is really caused by the pregnancy, but sof, where does the fatness come from? It's because the nature of an animal is, when it's pregnant, it eats more. So it's the animal that eats more. So it becomes fat. So therefore that fatness, that's now damaged, belongs to the Baal Para. Nafcha mai, however, when it comes to the nafcha is, how do they translate nafcha over here?
Expansion.
The what?
Expansion.
Okay. Expansion. Okay. Thank you. Okay, I didn't hear you. The expansion. So what that means basically is that when a cow is pregnant, so it has a larger appearance. And because of the larger appearance, you can get more money for the cow itself. If you want to sell just the cow itself, you're going to get more money for that. So that's another aspect of value that the para gains through this pregnancy of the vlad. That's called nafcha. So we're not talking about the actual fatness. It's more the appearance that it has, that you can get more money for this. So who gets paid for this? This damage now that happened. On one hand, it's the cow that has a bigger appearance and you can get more money for it. But on the other hand, it's caused by the fetus. So who gets paid for this? Rav Papa Ama LaBal Para. Rav Papa says it's the Baal Para that gets paid for it because it's the Para that could be sold for more money. Rav Acha ben Ravika Amar Cholkin. Rav Acha ben Ravika says, no, this value of this appearance, you have to divide the payment for this damage between the Baal Para and the Baal Vlad. Because on one hand, it's the Para itself that has more value now, based on its new appearance that it has. But on the other hand, though, it's caused by the Vlad that's inside of it. So therefore, they both are owners. They're both partners in this damage that happens, and therefore you divide that payment. Paskin like this, that you have to divide that part of the payment.
Yeah, but the whole thing is
Why is it like Balaylam? When the Vlad was inside the Para, this appearance is there, and at that time, if you would want to sell the Para, it has that higher value because of this appearance. So right then it has that already. Okay, the Mishnah now goes on to a different subject. This is related to something that we learned earlier in the Masechta. Mishnah goes on to discuss this inyan, a new inyan here. Mishnah Hakador shehichnis k'deirosav l'chotza balabayis. A potter, he brings his pots into someone's private property, into a chotza of a person owns a chotza, and he puts down his pots there. Shaloi b'rishus, without any permission. V'shavra behamtasho balabayis. And the behema of this owner of this courtyard is walking around and breaks these pots. So potter, he's potter for the fact that he broke them, because who gave you permission to bring your pots into my property here? Furthermore, v'im huska behen, if this cow or this animal of the owner of this courtyard gets damaged by these pots that are here, balik deis chayiv, the owner of these pots is going to be responsible for any of these damages. You brought it in without permission and you're causing me damage, so you're going to be chayiv. However, if this potter brings in his pots into this property with permission of the homeowner here, so then the balachotzer is going to be chayiv for any damages that his shayr causes to these pots, because if you gave permission, you're taking responsibility that your shayr is not going to damage these pots. Similar halacha, the Mishnah says, you bring your fruits, your produce, into the chutz of the balabais, shalei b'rishus, without any permission, v'achlasam be'emtasha balabais, and the behema of the balabas goes and eats up these fruits, potter. It's going to be potter for the fact that you damaged, you ate from his fruits, you didn't have permission to put it there. V'im huska behen, that is, if the peiris ended up damaging the behema of the balabas, so then balapeiris chayiv, the balapeiris is going to be chayiv for this damage. However, if he brought his peiris over here, b'rishos, so then balachotzer chayiv, the balachotzer will be chayiv. The Mishnah repeats the same exact din, second time over here. Taisus addresses this. Taisus over here says, because by the peiris, it's not so easy for the behemoth to get damaged by them. So maybe you would think that the same halacha doesn't apply. Behemoth putting in peiris and putting in a pot in a person's rishus is not exactly the same thing. Actually, Taisus over here says, Taisus says that the pots are easier to break. You're talking about pots and dishes, whatever, they're easier to break. So you would think maybe that's the responsibility of the owner of this courtyard, but not by peiris, where they don't break so easy. Maybe that's over here, it's not his responsibility. Okay. Weiter, the Mishnah says a third case, which is basically the same thing. A person brings his ox into someone's private property, without any permission. And the ox of the homeowner here went and gored this ox that you brought in without permission. Or his dog came and bit this ox that came in there. Potter. So the homeowner is potter. He came in without permission. If your ox that you brought in without permission gores the ox of the homeowner, chayiv, you'll be chayiv for the damages that you caused there. For another case, if the ox that you brought in without permission falls into a pit of water that's in this property, and you cause the water to become damaged, to become spoiled, and it smells now because of this, chayiv, you're going to have to pay for the damages you caused for this water. Another case, if there was a pit here, and the homeowner's father or son were there inside that pit, and now the ox that comes into this property falls into the pit and kills the person that's inside it. You have to pay kaifer for this. If you bring your ox into this property with permission of the homeowner, so then the balachatz is going to be chayiv for any damages that are caused to this shirt that you brought in b'rishus, because he took responsibility to make sure that it won't get damaged there. However, Rebbe argues and Rebbe says the kulon in all of these cases that we just said, the kalim which are the pots that is, or the paytis, or the shor that came in, even if you got permission from the owner of this courtyard to bring it in, nevertheless, ein chayiv, the homeowner here is not going to be chayiv for any damages that happens to your items that you brought in. Even though he gave you permission to bring it in, he's not going to be chayiv for this, ad sheyikabel olav lishmar. Until the balabais clearly verbally says, I accept upon myself the responsibility of any damages that happens. Meaning, the very fact that he gave permission for you to bring it in, it doesn't mean that he's taking responsibility for any damages that happens. He's just saying, yeah, I give you permission to bring it in here. But for your own responsibility, whatever happens, I'm not taking responsibility. He has to clearly take responsibility for what's going to happen. But if he brings it in and gives a shus, he's not responsible for this. Okay, the Gemara starts with the ratio of the Mishnah. What did it say in the beginning of the Mishnah? That if you bring it in, shaloi b'rishos, so then if your dishes over here, your kedetas get damaged, so then, or rather again, if you bring in your pots into this rishos, shaloi b'rishos, and now the animals of the homeowner get damaged from your kedetas or from your paydas, so then the Bala Kaderis that brought it in without permission is going to be chayiv for those damages. Says the Gemara, what could we understand from our Mishnah? Taime the shaloi b'rishus. The reason why the owner of the pots is going to be chayiv for the damages to the animals of the homeowner here is because he brought it in without permission. Ha b'rishus. However, if you would have brought it in with permission, then loy mechayiv Bal Kaderis b'niske behemto the Bal Chotzer. So then the owner of these pots is not going to be liable for the damages of the behemoth for the owner of the Chotzer. And we're not going to say that you brought it in here, you brought it in with rishus, but in other words, the Baal Kederis is accepting upon himself to be sure that his pots are not going to cause any damages to the animals of the Baal Chotzer. We're not going to say that. No, if you're getting rishus, you bring it in there, and you can put it down there, and you're not accepting any responsibility for any damages that your pots will cause to his animals. Says the Gemara, Mani, according to who does this go? Rabbi. Seemingly, this goes like the opinion that was brought in the end of the Mishnah, which is Rabbi. What was the whole basis of the opinion of Rabbi? The Rabbi says, Kol b'stame, any time where it's just stam, where it's not verbally spelled out that you're taking responsibility for damages, like Kabbalah Aleina Tirusa. You don't accept upon yourself any responsibility for damages. Now, what the Gemara here is saying is a chiddush, because what Rabbi said and what the Gemara is applying, Rabbi's opinion to the Reisha, is not exactly the same. Rabbi was speaking about the Baal Chotzer, where that when the Baal Chotzer says, you may bring your stuff into my property, so that's stam. He didn't spell out that he's taking responsibility for damages. He's not going to be responsibility for the damages of the Kalim. Now, the Gemara is applying that in the reverse as well. The Gemara is saying, just like Rabbi says in a case of stam, where you don't specify clearly that you're taking responsibility for damages, that the Baal Chotzer is not responsible for the damages that happens to the Kededos, the Gemara understands that you could say the same thing in the reverse according to Rebbe. That according to Rebbe, the Baal HaKadedos does not take any responsibility for the damages of the behemoth that happens when it's brought in B'rishos. Why? Because it wasn't spelled out. It wasn't specified. Only when you specify, then you take responsibility for the damages. But if you don't specify, then you don't take responsibility for those damages. So these 2 points, the way the Gemara understands now, goes together. So therefore it comes out that the halacha that we can understand from the ratio of the Mishnah follows Rebbe. Goes according to Rebbe, that says in a case of stome, not the Baal HaChotzer takes responsibility for the damages to the Baal HaKadedos, and not the Baal HaKadedos takes responsibility for what happens to the behemoths of the Baal HaChotzer. It goes both ways.
Both on their own.
Yeah. But now the Gemara says, Ei Meseifa, what does it say later on in the case of the Mishnah? Im Hichnis B'rishos, that if the Baal HaKadedos brings in his patzir with permission, then Baal Chotzer chayiv. Then the Baal Chotzer is taking responsibility for the damages that happens to these pots, even though it wasn't spelled out. So now, Asan l'Rabbanon, that's the Rabbanon, that's the Tana Kama, the Rabbanon in our Mishnah, which is saying that even without specifying clearly, the Baal HaChotzer is going to take responsibility for the damages by giving him permission to come in, even though he didn't specify that clearly. Again, Asan l'Rabbanon the Amri, B'stam and Nami, Kibuli Kabbalah Aleina Tirusa, even without spelling it out, the Baal HaChotzer is taking responsibility for the damages of the pots. So the first part of the Mishnah is Rabbi, and the continuation is the Rabbanon. that argue with Rebbe. V'su, and then further, when we come to the end of the Mishnah, here it brings the opinion of Rebbe. Rebbe says, B'kulan ein chayiv, that the Baal HaChatzah will not be responsible for any damages, even if he gave permission for him to come in, achi kabalolo balabayis lishmer, until the balabayis takes clear responsibility, clearly says he's taking responsibility to guard. So our question here is, Reisha v'seife Rebbe, the first halach in the Mishnah, the end of the Mishnah seems to be Rebbe. Umitziyasa, then the middle of the Mishnah, where it says that automatically, without verbalizing it clearly, the Baal HaChatzah takes responsibility just by giving permission to come in, is it Rabbanan? So we have the Mishnah, why is it bringing different opinions and with the Rabbanan in between? Amar Rab Zeira, so Rab Zeira answers, you're right, this is a good diuk, and we're going to have to say Tavra, you have to break up our Mishnah. Mi sheshonazu, loy shonazu. The one that says the halacha in the Reisha, that in a case of stama, the Baal Kedeiros takes the responsibility for the damages that it does to the behemoths over here, even when he came in Bereshus, that's going according to Rebbe. And it's not the same opinion that it says afterwards that in a case of stama, the Baal Chatzar does not take responsibility. It's two different opinions. However, Rav answers and says, no, there's no contradiction here. Kula Rabbanan hi. The whole beginning of the Mishnah is all the Rabbanan. And the point that the Gemara is going to explain over here is, you can't compare these two things. You can't compare the halacha that Rebbe said that the Baal Chotzer does not take responsibility when he gives reshus for the person to bring his pots in. He doesn't take responsibility for the damages. The Rabbanan holds that the Baal Chotzer, if you give permission for someone to bring the kedeiros into your property, you are taking responsibility, even without verbalizing it clearly. That's one point here. But then there's the flip side to it, the other side, the side of the Baal Kedeiros, the Baal Kedeiros that brings in his pots b'reshus. And he didn't verbalize b'feidish whether he's taking responsibility that his kedeiros shouldn't cause damage to the animals in this reshus. So over here, that case is different. Over here, the Baal Kedeiros, Rebbe would agree that without taking any responsibility for this, so even if it's not verbalized b'feidish, then he doesn't take any responsibility for this. It's a separate inyan. Okay, let's see it in the Lashon of the Gemara here. The Gemara itself doesn't spell out the answer fully, but let's see what the Gemara does say. So Rava says, Kula Rabbanan hi. We could say that the entire Mishnah here is the Rabbanan. Ubereshos, when the Baal Kedeiros is coming into this Chatzar with permission, so Shmiris Kedeiros Kibul Olav Baal Chatzar. So the Rabbanan's opinion, and this is the point that the Rabbanan are arguing on Rebbe, that the Baal HaChatzar, even without verbalizing it clearly, he is taking responsibility for the damages that would happen to the pots. And that's Vafila Nishburu Beruach. He took responsibility even without verbalizing it, not only if his animals are going to trample over these pots and are going to damage these pots, but even if a wind comes and breaks these pots, he also is taking responsibility for that. Why? The basis of the Rabbanan's opinion in this case is that when you give permission for someone to bring your pots into your reshus, you're basically saying with that, even if you didn't spell it out clearly, I'm going to be the shomer of your pots. I'm taking responsibility, full responsibility for whatever happens to your pots. Mm-hmm. So why? Because it's his chatzar, and he's present there. Mm-hmm. So therefore he's taking responsibility for this. But however, what the Gemara wanted to compare before, to say a similar thing in the reverse, that when the Baal Kedeiros brings his pots into the chatzar, that to say that he's taking responsibility for the damages that are going to happen to the behemoths of the Baal Chatzar, over here, if he's not going to specify clearly that he's taking responsibility, the Baal Kedeiros is not taking responsibility for this. Why not? Very simple. The Baal Kedeiros is not the owner of this place. He's not present over here. It doesn't make sense to say that when the Baal Kedeiros brings in his things, even if it's brought in B'reshos, that he took responsibility of Shmireh, that the animals of the Baal Chatzar won't be damaged. He's not staying here. He's not present over here. He doesn't own this chatzar. So therefore, in such a case, if it was stam, then he's not going to be responsible for the damages that happened to the animals of the Baal chatzar. So therefore, these two things are not similar b'chlal. That's why it's not a state over here. It's all, the whole entire mission is all the Rabbanan.
You can say the opposite. You can say it's already.
The what?
You can say it's already, and the person's bringing the periods or whatever.
No, but it doesn't fit with the opinion of Rabbi.
He automatically takes responsibility.
Yeah, okay, but on the other hand, though, you see over here, the Gemara wants to explain what you see from the Mishnah here, that the Baal HaChatzar becomes an automatic shemer. Even without specifying it clearly, in the Reisha of the Mishnah it says that the Baal HaChatzar becomes an automatic shemer. And that's according to the Rabbanan. Right, so therefore we know that the Reisha of the Mishnah has to be the Rabbanon. And then the Gemara says, however, when it comes to the Bala Kedeiros, to say that the Bala Kedeiros also takes automatic responsibility when he brings in his pots into this chutzner, that it's not going to damage the animals of the Bala Chutzner, that we can't say. Over here, the Bala Kedeiros doesn't live here. He's not taking automatic responsibility to guard the animals of the Bala Chutzner. It's not a contradiction. Okay, now the Gemara goes to the case where it said in the Mishnah, Hichnes Pereisav L'Chotza Balabayis, that if you brought in his Peres into the Chotza of the Balabayis without permission, and what happened? The animals of the Balabayis got damaged from this, so then the Balabayis is going to be chayiv because you brought it in without permission. Amarav, so Rav explains, in what way did the animals get damaged from these fruits that you brought in? The animals slipped on these fruits. Then you'll be responsible for bringing it in here. But if the animals of the Bala Chutzner ate these fruits, and the fruits that it ate too much, or whatever it is, that caused damage, then potter. The Bala Peres is going to be potter for this. Why my time? Because because the Bala Peres could say to the Bala Chutzner, your animals should not have eaten my fruits, right? Even though you brought in those fruits there, and you caused it to end up eating it, who asked you to bring in your fruits into my chutzner to cause my animals to eat it. But nevertheless, the fact that these animals are not just walking and slipping, they're doing a separate action of eating the fruits. So therefore, the Bala Peres is just a grama. He's causing the damage. A grama ben Izakan is always potter. The behemoths themselves are doing a separate action of eating the fruits, and that's what's causing the damage in these animals. Therefore, you're going to be potter for that. Rav Sheshes said about this statement of Rav, Amine, I say, Kinayim v'shochev Rav, Amalal lahot shmaitze. Then when he was awake and asleep, he wasn't fully awake, he must have said this halacha, because we have a clear brayso that says not so. The Tanya, we learned in the brayso as follows. Hanoisen samamoves lufnei behemes chaverei. A person that places poison in front of an animal of your friend, and the animal goes and eats it and dies. Pater medine Adam, b'chai bedine Shemayim. So in such a case, you'll be pater here in bedine Adam, but bedine Shemayim b'chai. This is also another example which you're causing the damage. It's a grama. You didn't directly damage the animal. You put it, and the animal ate it itself. You will guide him this nezek so that you pater medine Adam. Now, what can we understand from this brayso? Samamoves, when you put poison, the reason why you put it in such a case is because it's not normal for an animal to go and eat poison. So the fact that the animal went and eat it, you can't attribute the damage directly to the person that put it there. But from this we could understand from this brayso, but if you would have placed fruits in front of this animal, and then it ate it, then it caused damage for the animal. So in such a case, b'dinei Adam, nami mechayiv. You'll be chayiv even b'dinei Adam. But according to Rav, why should you be chayiv? Rav said, then in such a case, you still say that it's called a grama because the animal is doing the action itself of eating it, and therefore you can say you shouldn't have eaten, meaning that it's still also called a grama. So this is a clear question on what Rav said. So Amri, they answered Rav Shesh's question. No, it's no steer from this brayso, because who adina Philippedes nami poter medine Adam. Really, the halach in this brayso, it applies even when you placed fruits in front of an animal, and the animal ate the fruits and it got damaged. You'll also be poter, exactly like Rav said. Now, why did it only say it's the halach in a case where you placed poison down? The chiddush of the brayso is afilis samamoves nami. That even when you place poison, and it's very unusual for an animal to go and eat poison, it doesn't lie, it sees that the animal identifies what it eats, what it doesn't eat, and it knows it doesn't want to eat poison. And still the animal, when it ate it, chai b'dinei Shemayim. You still call the grama, and you will be chai b'dinei Shemayim, even though the animal did something so unusual. That was the chiddush of this brayso. But really the halacha, like Rav says, still applies. By saying what the Gemara gives another answer, Samamoves Nami. This brayso, when it says that you place poison in front of the animal, it doesn't mean that you put down poison, but it means Ba'afrasta. You place this poison inside, how do they tie Frasta there? Inside grass or other things. Frasta, they don't have a translation. Basically, you put the poison inside some kind of a food which is normal for the animal to eat. The Hainu Pedi, it's the same thing like Pedis, like Rav said, and that in such a case with the animal, it's a nature for the animal to eat this, but because it ate it on its own, so you'll be potter b'dinei Adam, chai b'dinei Shemayim. But the Gemara asks some Rav from a different brayso. Meisvei, the brayso says that Isha shenichtasol litchen chitim etzel balabayis shaloi b'rishos. A woman brings in her wheat to grind it by the mill of a balabas, and she didn't get permission for this. And the animal from the owner comes and eats it up. Potter. So the owner over here is Potter because you came in without permission here. Now, if these animals got damaged by this weed here, chayeves. So then the woman that brought in this weed here without permission will be chayev. Now, the Gemara understands at this point what happened, that these animals of the owner ate this wheat and they got damaged by this. But the question is, if they ate it and they got damaged, why is this woman that brought this in without permission chayev? Name it, we should say like Rav said, that the animal shouldn't have eaten this wheat and therefore you be potter for this damage. So the Gemara answers, Amri, they said, why are you asking a question from this brayse? The language that it says in this brayse, is it any stronger than what it said in our Mishnah? And our Mishnah also said that if your pate is damaged, the behemoth, that you'll be responsible. But in the Mishnah we explained, what does that mean? Rav said it means you only chayiv when the behemoth slip on these fruits. So over here in the brayse, it's obvious. You could say the same thing, that the only chayiv if the behemoth slipped on this wheat that this woman brought in, but not when they ate. Why are we even asking a question from this brayse? So now the Gemara actually explains, the one that asked this question, there was a reason he did ask this question from this brayse. Or the karilo, my karilo. What was he even thinking of asking a question over here from this brayse? Amalach will answer you as follows. Bishleim masnisin. In the Mishnah it's understood why Rav said what he said. Because Katani, in our Mishnah it says, Im huska bahen. If the animal of the owner got damaged in them. What does huska bahen mean? Shahuchlaka bahen. That sounds like what Rav is saying. That the animal only slipped. Bahen does not sound like it ate it. It sounds like it slipped in it. So, however, over here in the brayse, Katani, what does it say? It doesn't say the word bahen. It says im huska. If the animal got damaged, right? So first the brayse says the animal ate. And it says that the owner of the animal doesn't have to pay for this, that it ate it up. And then it right away says im huska. If the animal got damaged, so it sounds like it got damaged by eating it. Not that it slipped in it. Velikatani behen. It doesn't say the word behen in this brayse. So achilu diktani. So therefore it sounds like what the brayse is saying, that the animals ate and that's how it got damaged. And that's why the one that asked the question asked on Rav from here. But no, the other one that gave the answer will tell you, Amalach loishno, doesn't make a difference. Even though it doesn't say the word behen, but we'll have to say according to Rav that over here it only means that the animal slipped. And that's why the owner is you have to pay the owner for this, and not that the animal ate it. One more raya the Gemara tries to bring Toshima. We learned in the brayse, Hichnis shoyroi l'chotza balabayis shaloi bereshus. You brought your shirt into the chotza of a homeowner without his permission. V'achal chitin, and the shirt ate chitin here in this shus of the balabas, and the hitris umeis, and it caused it to get sick, and it died from this. Had diarrhea and it got sick and it died from this. Potter. So you'll be potter for these damages. Because who asked you to bring your cow into or your ox into my rishos with our permission? However, if this person brought his ox over here into this property with rishos, and now it ate from this chitim and it died, the balachatza will be chayiv for the fact that it ate and it got sick and it died. But the question over here is, why is the balachatza chayiv for this? Why can't the homeowner say that even though I gave you permission to bring your shayt into my property, but it ate on its own. If it ate on its own, that kind of damages is not my responsibility because it's only sort of a grum. It shouldn't have eaten on its own. Mm-hmm. Now, this is not the case that Rav was talking about. Rav was talking about a case where you brought your peiris shaloi b'rishus into the property of a person, and the animal of the homeowner ate from it and got damaged by it. And over there, Rav said, even though usually when you bring in shaloi b'rishus, you're responsible, but when it ate from it, you're going to be potter. But here the Gemara is asking from a case where a person brings it in b'rishus, you took responsibility to guard it, but nevertheless, the Gemara is asking still, according to Rav, if this animal eats from your chitim and it gets sick and dies, you shouldn't be responsible for that, because that's the svara of Rav, that when it eats itself, you're not responsible. But the Gemara says it's not the same thing. Amar Rav said, b'rishus, ashaloi b'rishus karamis. You're asking from this brayse where it talks about when it brought it in b'rishus, from the case where Rav was speaking about, where a person brought in his peiris without permission into a person's property. It's not the same thing. B'rishus over here, when the peiris, or rather when this shayr came into your property with your permission, you gave permission for the person to bring in his ox over here. Shmiras shayrai kibul alav. Over here, you accept a full responsibility as a shaymer. You accept that as full responsibility to take care of this ox. Even if this ox is going to simply strangle itself, which is obviously something that it causes to itself, you're still responsible for that because you're a full-fledged shomer. In such a case, Rav would never say that if it eats, that you're not going to be responsible. Of course you're responsible. You're a shomer. Rav was talking before about a case where you brought in your peiros shaloi b'rishos and the homeowner's ox got damaged by eating from it. Over there, we say you didn't take responsibility as a shomer. So therefore over there, it's only a grama that it ate from it and you're going to be potter for that.